Yeah, so looking back to, I would say 2006, I was living in Welland at the time. I was in high school, grade 11, and, living with my mom, my dad, and my older brother, right? We had a great family dynamic, and, my father worked as an iron worker. He worked construction. One day he got injured at work, and then, took a few weeks off, with intentions to return to work, of course. Injury got worse, and during a few weeks, a lot of things happened, right? He was stressing, and I think the fear got the best of him. He was fearful that his injury would get worse, fearful that he might not be able to return to work, and fearful that he would lose everything that he worked so hard for, right? And I remember seeing my father sort of walking back and forth in the house, and you could tell he was worried, and lots of conversations on the phone with his employer, planning his return or figuring little things out. And he was trying to get better. I remember him even walking down the road, and he was in a lot of pain, hurt his lower back. And as time went on, he probably took about a month off of work, and then I remember talking to him, and I said, listen, everything's gonna work out. And I was in high school, so I was playing competitive volleyball, basketball, I was working out, hanging out with the good kids during the day and the bad kids at night, right? Trying to find the balance. So, you don't worry about, your parents, they're your role models, right? I had a great relationship with my father. He was really loving, caring. Always told me he was proud of me too, right? Always made sure that I knew that he was proud of me. And typical morning for my father is he would, go to Timmy's, grab a cup of coffee, and he'd leave it on the counter for my mom when she woke up every day. And that morning, same routine. He went, grabbed a cup of coffee, left it on the table for my mom, and also left a note on the fireplace mantle that morning. And I was sleeping at my friend's house. We were actually supposed to go to a wedding rehearsal the next day. And I remember my friend's mom calling me in the morning, and she was yelling upstairs. We were sleeping, and she said, Jesse, your mom's on the phone, right? So answer the phone. We had house phones back then, right? And I can hear my mom's voice, right? You could tell something was wrong, right? She said, Jesse, you need to come home. I think Dad did something, right? So hung up the phone, and we rushed home, and then, shortly thereafter, right, two officers at the door, and saying that they had found my father, and he had taken his own life, right? So from that moment, right, I remember holding my mom, hugging her, and telling her that, everything will be all right, we'll get through this. But I also remember thinking, like, I have no clue what I'm gonna do, right? But I just know that I needed to be there. I just knew that I needed to be there for my mother, right? And then, lots of ups and downs, right, from that moment on, obviously. Lots of ups and downs. I was in grade 11, so keeping my mind occupied with, volleyball and basketball. And I remember having so much support from my teachers, right? And teachers like my volleyball coach and my gym teacher, Phil Desjardins, right? He probably doesn't realize how much of an impact he had on my life, but, the lessons that he taught me during that time and how to respect adversity, and, showed me that he believed in me. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, I was playing basketball the one day, and I said, I can let this get the best of me. I can make excuses and feel sorry for myself, or I can use this to my advantage, and I can use this negative situation and actually use it as motivation, right? And I remember and thinking of this, and at the time I even realized that I'm like, okay, like this is I'm grateful that I'm able to have this mindset right now, that I can use this as positive energy. But there were lots of ups and downs, right? I remember being in class and storming out of class and just crying uncontrollably, right? And by myself in the hallway, right? And that was unusual. And I was like, and it was a situation where you're going through something that's that difficult that you can't stop crying, or you can't stop going through that hurt, right? And it's something that you've never dealt with before. So whereas usually you can brush it off and be like, oh, whatever, move on. But I've realized over the couple years after that happened, I was extremely positive about most things. I developed this positive outlook, right? And I was the one that found others that were going through similar situations, and I was able to, tell them, hey, listen, you can get through this. being able to have those conversations. And I found that by talking to other people and letting them know that they'll get through it, and giving them motivational speeches or giving them some motivational quotes, although maybe deep down inside I wasn't that happy, or I was still hurting. I found that by helping others believe that they can get through it, it was helpful to me. And I think I did that for many years, right? Moving on to college, I was extremely positive my first couple years of college. People that met me, they said, "You seem fake because you were so positive," right? And I remember looking back, and I was extremely positive. And I think I was also bottling things in. I wasn't dealing with my emotions, listening to motivational speeches and reading books, just wrapping myself around all the motivation that I can, right? It wasn't till a couple years later that I hit a wall one day, right? And I remember feeling vulnerable, and then I started thinking about things that actually bothered me, and then my heart would start racing, and I had nights where lots of anxiety. But I remember thinking, I can go skydiving, hanging off. So I can go skydiving, feet hanging out of an airplane. I'm about to jump out, my heart's racing. I'm okay. But when I'm laying in bed with my fiance watching Netflix and my heart's racing, I'm not okay, right? And it was that moment that I said, okay, well, I need to take a proactive approach, because when you're in the clutter and you feel like there's no way out, you're weak, you feel weak rather, and you feel hopeless, right? But I realized that when I'm going through those moments where I'm anxious and my heart is racing, it's important to have that little bit of hope in knowing that you will find your way out of the clutter, and knowing that when you're having a good day or a good week, right, to take a proactive approach. And I found that there were a few things that helped me, right? Getting enough sleep, eating well throughout the day, being active, whether it's lifting weights, cardio, meditation, yoga, and then of course having meaningful conversations, right, with your friends and family, right? And those four things, the balance of those four things help me. So when I get into those moods where I'm feeling anxious, right, I know that there's a way out. And I mean, like I said, use an example of laying down in bed with my fiance watching TV, and heart starts racing, right? I'm so grateful to have her, right? Because just being able to hold her hand, or just slowing down my breath and just breathing, being able to get through it, it's been amazing, right? So a message, for people too that I tell them is, fear less, right? Love more, and then always have hope. I think fear is something that, fear can overtake you, right? Like it did to my father, right? If you let fear get the best of you, it's hard to get out of it. But I mean, overcoming fear too, right? Like I said, I went skydiving. Afraid of heights, but you go skydiving, right? Being afraid to fail too. I think that, because the winner and the loser both have failed, right? It's the winner that keeps failing, right? So that's an important lesson too. Is I was actually with my nephews yesterday, and we got some Chinese food. We're outside on the picnic table eating, and we opened up the fortune cookie. And he's only 9. Teaching him how to read the fortune cookie, and he was afraid to pronounce the first word, right? He's stuck at O. I said, he sort of knew what the word was, but he didn't want to say it out loud because he's afraid to fail. And I told him, I said, listen, you can't be afraid to fail, right? I'm like, if you pronounce it wrong, I'm like, what's the big deal? You can try again, right? And then he actually went ahead and said others, right? So, and I was proud of him, right? So I felt like it was a fortune cookie, but it was a simple lesson of like, you can't be afraid to fail. So being able to teach these lessons by having gone through things, it's been amazing. That's why I believe that, mental advocacy is important, because sharing your story, right? Like coming here, of course, I'm a little nervous because I have to sit here and talk about my story. And, I think that keeping a perspective that even though you're going through a difficult time, you're certainly not alone. There's always someone out there going through something difficult, whether it's something that you're going through or something even worse, right? So just knowing that you can reach out to someone, it's important. So reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, I'm not feeling well today, and they might be like, oh, I'm not feeling well either, and then you guys can have a conversation, and then you feel better, right? So that's been good too. I've got lots of good friends, able to call them up, and I found throughout the years too, right? With anxiety, like I look at it as energy too, right? Anxiety is energy. I remember laying in bed, when I was young, and you feel your pulse on your pillow, right? Thump, thump, thump. You're trying to get some rest, and I would just picture myself. I close my eyes. I just picture myself running down the basketball court, back and forth, right? Close my eyes and just say, you know what? Like, this is just energy. I'm running right now, right? And then I would fall asleep. So perspective, right? When you're going through things, knowing that when you have anxiety, maybe it's just energy, right? Look at it from a different point of view, right? It's not anxiety because there's something wrong. It's anxiety because there's excitement, there's energy, and you need to channel that energy and make something positive out of it, right? And I think over the years, however, with my father sort of sacrificing his life for the betterment of our lives, I feel as though I might have put a lot of pressure on myself to be somebody important, right? So over the years, I put a lot of pressure on myself. Is my job good enough? Am I being good enough of a person? Making a lot of mistakes along the way, but also, living in regret. And then I hit a point where I said, you know what? I need to forgive myself for the mistakes that I've made, right? And I need to accept, acknowledge where I am today. And now I've gotten to a better place. I'm at a better place now because I've got a solid job, a reliable job where I can, be happy with. I don't have to worry about my job. I've got a good family. I've got my fiance. I've got lots of friends. So it's nice to just acknowledge what you have and be grateful for what you have instead of wanting more. Although you still need to be, motivated and want to achieve goals and such, but you need to find a balance, right? So I would consider myself a warrior fighting for balance. And that's what I like to tell people because, it's hard to be motivated and go after your goals, but also acknowledge what you have right now and be grateful for what you currently have, right? So it's a long-winded speech. I don't know, hopefully there's a couple of good cuts in there. That's how I feel. I don't know, I just rambled on a little bit.
I'm speechless.
Felt good to say, yeah, I felt good to talk a little bit about it, yeah.
Thank you.